Over the last week, I've been using the iPhone XS Max as my main phone. Today, I decided to talk about the specifications of the phone and review them to let people know if it is worth buying. This is the iPhone XS Max specs video. Hello everybody, my name is Matt and this is Real World Review. What I'm going to do is go over the specs of the phone, and at the end, I will score the phone based on my personal experiences as a user and cell phone repairman. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section or on Twitter at MattofRWR. Let's get started. To start, our first category is the outside hardware. Let's start with the display. The display is a 6.5-inch Super Retina HD OLED display with part of the screen cut out of it. The screen resolution is 2688 by 1242, totaling 458 pixels per inch. The contrast ratio is 1,000,000 to 1. The display is a True Tone display, but that feature can be turned off, along with being a wide color P3 display. The brightness of the screen is 625 lux, making it the same as the iPhone X and XS. The glass does have an oleophobic coating on the front to make it fingerprint resistant, along with being stronger than last year, allegedly. The screen-to-body ratio is about 84% and has extremely thin bezels. It also has a 19.5 by 9 ratio, which is weird, but I like it. Let's talk about the rest of the front. The top portion houses one of the two stereo speakers and doubles as an earpiece. Above that is a proximity sensor along with the ambient light sensor. There is a microphone hidden near the earpiece and is used for Siri and dictation. Next to all of that are many sensors, like the infrared camera, flood illuminator, and dot projector. The front camera is a 7-megapixel sensor, just like the iPhone X, but slightly better. On the bottom portion, it's all screen, just like last year. Moving on to the frame. On the bottom of the device are 11 weird holes. No headset jack, but they do have space for another antenna line. On the left side there are 4 holes for the microphone, while on the right side there are 7 holes for a second speaker. Looks like they forgot the 4th microphone. Again. In the middle of those 2 holes are the only 2 screws on the outside of the device. In the middle of things is the 8-pin lightning jack that supports USB 2.0. This is another year that Apple forgot to put USB 3.0 on a phone that cost over $1,000. On the right side of the device is a large side button, and below that is a SIM card tray. On the left side of the device is a ring/silent rocker along with the volume up and volume down buttons. And on the top there is a lonely antenna line. This is the first time since the iPhone 5S that Apple put something up here. On the back of the device there are 2 12-megapixel cameras that sit very high off the phone and are covered by a breakable sapphire camera lens. It's not solid sapphire, there's just a little bit inside of it. There is also a quad LED True Tone flash along with a 3rd microphone. Under all of this is a large slab of strong glass. As for the size, the device is 157.5 millimeters tall, 77.4 millimeters wide, and 7.7 millimeters thick, or 6.2 inches tall, 3.05 inches wide, and 0.3 inches thick. As for the weight, the XS Max is 208 grams, or 7.34 ounces. The phone is water resistant, but it does not have a user removable battery or back. And now we move on to the cameras. There are 2 12-megapixel sensors, and there is a quad LED True Tone flash unit. There is a wide angle and telephoto sensor, which are both optically stabilized. These sensors also have 6-element lenses, autofocus with focus pixels, and are both backside illuminated. The wide-angle sensor has an aperture of f1.8, while the telephoto sensor has an aperture of f2.4. The camera is capable of many software options like capturing raw image, face and body detection, live photos, a 3 or 10-second timer, digital zoom of 10 times, HDR, burst mode, panorama, and red eye correction. The cameras also allow for portrait mode, portrait lighting, and optical zoom of 2 times. As for video recording, this phone has many different options. You can record 4K at 24, 30, or 60 frames per second, 1080p at 30 or 60 frames per second, 720p at 30 frames per second, and slow motion video can be captured at 1080p at 120 or 240 frames per second. While recording, there is a digital zoom up to 6 times, and the phone can support time-lapse video. The front camera is a 7-megapixel true depth sensor with an aperture of f2.2. It allows for a max of 1080p recording at 60 frames per second. This seems to be a first, but remember that this camera does not have optical image stabilization. Maybe next year this will be the best vlogging phone. The next category is the inside hardware. As usual, we start with the processor. The processor in this phone is a 64-bit A12 Bionic chip with no mention of a Motion coprocessor. It is a 7nm hexa-core processor, with 4 being low-powered Tempest cores and 2 being high-powered Vortex cores that run up to 2.49 GHz according to Geekbench 4. Geekbench gives the phone a score of around 4,820 for the single core and 11,552 for the multi-core test. The GPU is a quad-core chip that is made by Apple. Little is known about this chip other than that Apple claims that it is 50% faster than the iPhone X. While testing a GPU, Geekbench gives the phone a score of around 20,987. The phone has 4GB of RAM, which is a first for the iPhone. The model I'm reviewing is the A1921, and it is factory unlocked. The phone supports 1G, 2G, 3G, and 4G, assuming that the market you're in still supports those, along with LTE bands 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 17, 18, 19, 20, 25, 26, 29, 30, 32, 34, 38, 39, 40, 41, 46, 66, and 71. As for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi chip is the 802.11a, B, G, N, AC MIMO, and the Bluetooth is version 5.0. The phone also supports GLONASS, AGPS, Digital Compass, QZSS, NFC with reader mode, and iBeacon. The battery is a 3,174 mAh lithium-ion battery with 2 cells. The battery lasts all day, although Apple claims that you will get 15 hours of video playback, 65 hours of audio, 13 hours of internet usage, and 25 hours of talk time. Note that Apple doesn't post the standby times anymore. This phone does support fast charging, but requires a 29-watt USB-C charger, along with a USB-C to Lightning cable. Still, we only get a 5-watt charger in the box. Embarrassing. This phone can also support wireless charging and will accept a max of about 7.5 watts. There are many software features that Apple added into iOS 12, and here are just a handful of noteworthy features. The Compass app has been redesigned, and a Measure app has been added. The Stocks and Voice Memos app has been redesigned. Memoji, which I will briefly go over. The Screen Time feature has been added, along with a new battery stats area. And my favorite, the software updates page has finally allowed you to disable automatic updates, even though they were never automatic in the first place. Common misconception. The phone supports a bunch of different audio formats like ACC, FLAC, WAV, and MP3. As for video playback, the phone supports a few formats like MP4, M4V, and MOV. Now that we have gone over the specs, it's time for me to give this phone a score. Note that this phone costs $1,099 for the 64GB version, $1,249 for the 256GB version, and $1,449 for the 512GB version. It should also be noted that this phone is a week old, and most people will want to buy this phone new, and the scoring does account for this. Let's start with the frame. The phone is made out of glass and stainless steel. The frame is stainless steel with a very small amount of plastic, while the front and the back of the phones are both glass. The design is pretty much the same as the iPhone X, except for the fact that the phone is larger and different on the bottom. No, the headset jack did not come back. Instead, Apple gave us another antenna line. Fun. There's another one on the top as well. This is a first for iPhones since they moved to the iPhone 6 design. The camera sensor still sticks way too far out of the phone. Maybe Apple can, just make a thicker phone. Just a thought. To be fair, this is the heaviest phone that Apple has released, and it feels like it too. Still, a thicker iPhone XS would work. We still get the oversized side button that lacks the fingerprint scanner. If they didn't want to put a fingerprint scanner in this button, then why did they make it so big? There's no home button on the front, and I hope that everyone knows that I don't care. Having a physical home button has always been weird, but at the same time reaching down to swipe up is a little bit weird. But I still think it's better. I mean, have you seen Android phones for, the last 5 years? All the buttons are on the screen. Nothing really changed other than Apple adding a gold color and the size, so I will give the outside hardware an 8 out of 10. Next is the screen. Again, Apple impressed me. They put a 6.5-inch screen into a brand that launched 11 years ago with a 3.5-inch screen. The Samsung Note 9 is 6.4 inches, so Apple outdid Samsung this time. Obviously, the screen resolution doesn't match Samsung's, but still. They confuse people that don't read the keynotes and convince some news articles that Apple actually put the ProMotion screen into this phone, but nothing has changed. The screen still has a 60Hz refresh rate, but the digitizer has a 120Hz refresh rate for smoother scrolling, even though that doesn't make sense at all. It looks nicer than phones like the iPhone 8 Plus, but that's because of the OLED screen. I can't believe I've got this far into the category without reminding you that Apple was keeping OLED phones, and I love this. Same clarity and resolution as the iPhone X, but just bigger. The notch is less noticeable because of the screen size, and personally I like it. However, it is still weird in landscape mode. Also, some apps haven't entirely updated for the screen, but they eventually will. Honestly, I think somewhere around 6 inches would have been perfect, but only if they had an OLED screen with the same aspect ratio. No, the iPhone XR will not help this issue. True Tone is here to stay on the screen, but you already know how I feel about that. I'm glad that Apple kept the screen, but really it's just a larger iPhone X screen, so it'll get an 8.75 out of 10 for this category. Next is the inside hardware. This is obviously the fastest iPhone out there, but I don't see it. In gameplay, you notice a little bit of a difference. The thing that confused me is the fact that Apple killed or forgot about the Motion coprocessor, because the iPhone X had one with the A11 chip, but on the A12 chip, it doesn't have one. It's interesting because news outlets state that Apple does have one in there, even though Apple never said anything about that. This 3174 milliamp battery sounds good on paper, but really it just means you shouldn't expect anything more than a full day of charge. Because of the screen and the size, you shouldn't expect to get 2 days out of this battery, but that's why the battery is this exact size, rather than being a 3200 or a 3500 milliamp cell. I will have to admit the speakers are slightly louder than the iPhone 8 Plus, which was expected, but honestly I kind of thought Apple was just lying about that. It still sounds a little bit awkward because the front speaker is facing towards you while the bottom is not, so you'll have to cup it to make a more balanced stereo effect. The phone comes with 64 gigabytes and goes up to 512 gigabytes, which is crazy and expensive. The phone gets warm just like the iPhone X, which isn't too bad, but those PUBG matches will heat up your phone pretty quickly. Overall, I will give this phone an 8.5 out of 10 for the inside hardware. Next is the camera. I don't like that Apple said that the camera is better than the iPhone X because everything they explained was either something that the iPhone X had or it was software based. However, when I use the camera, I realized that there's a little bit more to it. The phone still lacks full professional features, but they did add some to the portrait mode. To me, it seems more to be software feature mixed with the processor because it captures the image really quickly and allows you to set the depth after taking the picture. This sounds good, but pretty much all that it means is that your portrait shots will be slightly better. It is a nice feature, but it's one that I know most people won't care about. Or you will and you'll kind of forget about it. Other than that, the cameras are very similar to the iPhone X, along with its recording abilities. Apple did allow the front camera to shoot 1080p at 60 frames per second, which I definitely enjoy. There is no optical image stabilization for the front camera, but it's a start. The camera is slightly better, but it will still get a 9.25 out of 10. Next is the software. The phone comes with iOS 12.0, and at the time, iOS 12.1 is in beta stage. I never got too used to iOS 11, but I do know that it's very similar to iOS 12. Most of the things for iOS 12 are under the hood, which means that old phones will benefit from this update. For me, I didn't really see many updates. There are things like screen time, Memoji, group notifications, and some new Siri commands. Even then, I noticed a change in one and didn't really use any of the other things. Memoji is essentially Animoji, but now you can create one to look like you. I never really cared about Animoji, so I don't really care about Memoji either. Screen time is nice because you can see what apps you use, how long, and the notifications that you get from those apps and when you pick up the phone. There's other stuff in this that helps limit your screen usage, if you're into that. Notifications are grouped now and prevent clutter, but generally I clear my notifications when I get them. Also, with the Apple Watch, I rarely see any notifications on my phone. I mean, iOS 12 is cool if you have an older phone, but on the iPhone XS Max, it seems like iOS 11, just with some new built-in apps. It's not bad, but I don't feel like it deserves a major release. I wish they followed the macOS naming and just stayed with 10. whatever and moved on from there. As for the software, it never gets put into the scoring, but I will still give it an 8 out of 10. The last score is a future-proofing score. Like I said before, USB 3.0 matters for the future, but this phone doesn't have USB 3.0. Apple can definitely afford to put USB 3.0 in this phone, they just decided not to. The battery has shown that it does pretty good with the iPhone X, so I would assume that it would be the same thing with the iPhone XS Max, but the battery life is still decent at best. Since iOS 12 is pretty much a refinement of iOS 11, it leads me to believe that this phone will get software update for a long time. And for a phone that costs $1,100 or more, it better. I mean, the iPhone 5S is going into year 6 of software updates, so the iPhone XS Max should last longer than that. Since Apple didn't really do too much to the hardware to make this phone last longer than the iPhone X, it will keep the same scoring, making the phone future-proof, and it will get an 8 out of 10. Add up the scores and the phone gets an 82.5 out of 50, or 85%. Similar to the iPhone X, this is an awesome phone, but it's so close to the iPhone X that it doesn't really seem like much of an upgrade. Since the phone is larger, the notch seems like it's a little bit smaller, but really it's the exact same size. Or at least that's what it looks like. Given the base price of $1,099, I expected a little bit more. With this said, it is an awesome phone. I just wish that Apple can sell phones for a little bit less money, or, maybe give us better accessories in the box. Pretty much what I'm saying is if you have an iPhone X or an iPhone 8 Plus, skip this phone. And that's it. Let me know what else you want me to review in the comments section below or on Twitter at @MattofRWR. And I have a question for you. Is this screen too big or is it just right? Let me know, and feel free to follow me on the social media listed above. Also subscribe to my channel so I can make more videos like this, and hit that bell button so you know when the basics video comes out. Thanks for watching.